Hello. Braden and Herrington here with Davie Portman for upNXT, postwrestling.com, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, youtube.com/upNXT, patreon.com/upNXT. David, usually we're your NXT friends. But you see, it's Friday. Usually we don't really have NXT. We just did our upNXT, and we do so many other crazy amounts of shows on our Patreon. But we thought we'd do a little freebie.
Now we're just your Freebie Friday friends.
We're just your freebie Friday, like Freaky Friday.
But for free.
Yeah, we thought...
Freebie Friday friends.
We're definitely freaky in the BDE. We thought that, we do so many other shows, and we do a lot of reviews of, like, movies and so much wrestling. Holy cow, so much wrestling. And we thought that's kind of what we've been doing in our quarantine to kind of keep ourselves from going kind of crazy. And we thought that, maybe other people in the world who like watch NXT with us, watch wrestling, that's a hobby there, to watch wrestling and stuff. It can kind of connect us. So this is kind of like a different show. We're not really here to review anything.
Nope. Just here to shoot the shit. Pretty much.
And we're joined by a friend of the show that we've kind of wanted to have on for quite some time. Friend of the post-wrestling world. We first encountered him through wrestling, and like I said, wrestling can bring people together. But welcome to upNXT. This guy's been waiting so long to get on a post-wrestling upNXT, any of these shows. Welcome to the show, Jordan Goodman.
Yes. Yo, thank you guys. I've been listening for years, and to watch you in real time do your signature intros was a fucking trip. So,
we are on like a cam thing, and I did see your reaction. You were like, okay, you are a bigger fan than us than like the actual wrestling that you also watch.
Yeah, no, it's on now, guys. This is great.
Please, I'm gonna butcher, but please explain like what you do and kind of who you are, because
give us your life story in like 90 seconds, basically.
Look, I can sum that down to a couple words. When people out in the world ask, like, what do you do? I prefer to lead with what I believe, and I believe that life improves when we feel connected. I have spent my lifetime as an artist and a professional doing things that both make me feel connected, but also increase meaningful connection to the people that I serve.
So you're a hippie?
Yeah, I'm hippied up as fuck. I got these bells that I'm rocking right here. I got my 1980s rockers poster and some fake ash trees behind me. Like, I'm ready to go, guys.
Yeah,
nice.
I know, like, you're kind of, like, deep in, like, psychology. Now, this is kind of strange because I met you when I was still working for Fight Network and The Law in Buffalo for a Ring of Honor show. Because at the time, like, the Bullet Club, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and all that stuff were doing a show in Buffalo, so my work was, like, going to send me down. And you were, like, the media talent, like, relations guy, and knew who I was, and somehow hooked me up with, like, this sweet interview with, like, the whole Bullet Club, and it was crazy. But you were like, yeah, that's cool, but hey, man, I love listening to you. And it was such a weird thing. I was there to just see some wrestling, and the guy who's working at Ring of Honor was, like, marking out over me, and I was like, this is incredible. But we kind of hit it off, and that was fun.
To give you the short of it, I do a bunch of shit. I'm a musician. I'm a drummer primarily. I've played in bands most of my life. I'm also a licensed psychotherapist in the state of Maryland. The clinical modality that I use most is drumming. I share at conferences and do keynotes and all that. But I also love pro wrestling. I've been trained as a pro wrestler when I was a teenager.
What?
Dude, in 1999 when pro wrestling was at its height in the mainstream, in my community, there was a promotion that popped up in a training school that were willing to take my parents' money to allow me to train and perform as a teenage pro wrestler. So it's something I've always loved in deeper ways than just watching Monday Night Raw on TV. And as I grew up, I was always fascinated by not just the wrestling storylines and the content, because oftentimes a lot of it sucks, right? But I've always been more interested in what does it take to produce a pro wrestling event? What does it take to produce a pro wrestling TV show? What does it take to get people to spend their hard-earned money to come to an independent wrestling event? How do you get people to know about that? And I got to learn a lot of those things firsthand and be inspired by both the art and business of pro wrestling by being in bands, whether it's paying attention to the merch table or paying attention to promotion or paying attention to emotionally engaging and storytelling with an audience. Everything is pro wrestling in a sense. So after a full decade of getting a master's in clinical psychology, building a business called Beatwell, through which I use rhythm to help people feel more connected, I had this itch to explore pro wrestling in much deeper ways. And I ended up, Ring of Honor created a position for me full-time.
You tricked them into creating a whole opening just for you, a job that didn't exist.
Yes, that's what I did. And it was a lovely narrative that I actually shared in full on a Facebook Live. We can talk about that later if you want.
Yeah.
But essentially, we met in, I think, October 2017. That was my first month in. I left a few days after the G1 Supercard show at MSG.
You left while you were hot.
You got to go out on top, brother.
Yeah.
So, and you guys were there, and that was really the most lovely bookends to my Ring of Honor career, is to experience it with you, Braden, and you, Davie, as well at the end.
Well, it's crazy because, I met you through wrestling and Ring of Honor, and we exchanged Facebooks and Twitter and all that stuff. But then we'd go back and forth, and Davie, you can attest as wrestling fans. That you instantly find someone that you kind of click with, and you realize you're a wrestling fan. You don't even have to live in the same country. You can instantly become.
So many. I mean, it's the reason I'm chatting with you right now.
Through connecting with so many people, through not just the podcast, but
completely.
You watch it and all these things. But me and Jordan started messaging and becoming friends, and we had not seen each other since that, and that was in the States because you are from the U.S. But then, we went to WrestleMania weekend last year, and you were like, "Hey, Ring of Honor, the company you work for, was putting on a little show at a little indie venue called Madison Square Garden," and you were like, "Hey, you guys can come with me." And me and David were like, "Oh, this is incredible." We were two travelers to Madison Square Garden was always kind of something we wanted to go to, and going there, we got to sit with you, and I'm pretty sure we were sitting with other.
I felt a bit out of place. I loved it, but it's all these suits around me, and I can't remember what t-shirt.
We're hard cam MSG. We were hitting
slamming the golden screwdrivers.
We were there for Kota Ibushi in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and we were having triple golden screwdrivers and doing what is it, vape pens in the Madison Square Garden washroom, which we probably shouldn't have been doing or talking about now. We're probably never allowed back. But we got to sit with you and watch some amazing wrestling. But it's cool that wrestling can kind of bring people together. And I know we are stuck in quarantine, and that's kind of a cool message that you can have friends that you don't see, or even maybe don't even do Skype calls with, but someone to talk to in your group chats that you may not even know who some of these people are, but you talk to them on the regular, and it's just crazy. But we got to sit with you at Madison Square Garden. And you said you felt a little out of place because me and Davey were a little inebriated. We were sitting next to you, who was eating a delicious Madison Square Garden lobster roll.
Yes, I was in my suit, looking fine as hell.
You look great. You did look great.
Yeah. You were trying to steal some. I don't want to talk about it, but continue.
Eating my lobster roll. drinking my whatever the beer was, maybe a I don't know, a Shock Top, I think.
Sure.
On the company credit card. And essentially, by the time the show started, my work was done. I did a ton of prep. I mean, look, I was responsible 9 months prior to let the world know that the event existed and to make sure it's sold out. That was stressful at first because I started thinking like, yo, what if it doesn't? Then I'm going to have a long road ahead of me to make sure it does. That was my job. Essentially, the role that was created there for me was to be responsible for branding and communications, which touches, branding touches every aspect of a company, from social media to the TV product to the creative that you see on TV and at live events. But look, when to invite you guys as my guests, and you guys were literally sitting among the office of Ring of Honor.
Yeah, and then I said I felt out of place. Loved it, but
We're hard cam, like the best seats, so all the stuff is towards the cam where we are, and me and David made it on TV because during, like, I think it's the Kota Ibushi match.
Yeah, Naito's spot.
He kicks out and we lose our shit, and like we're on camera, but it's just so interesting that we're just two like fans hanging out. Like the whole arena was packed.
But there wasn't any like, who the fuck are these guys? Was there, Jordan?
If there were, like, I didn't give a fuck.
Okay.
Look. To be honest, you guys were my first choice to be with, and here's why. Braden mentioned that there's just an instant connection. Yeah, that's true. Braden and I kept in touch all the way up until that show from the first day that we met back in the fall of 2017. And what I love about the two of you is that just you guys are pro wrestling fans. I fought for that Ring of Honor job because I'm a fan of pro wrestling. And there's a lot of people within the business of it that get jaded or that get burnt out, or the stress of the job takes away the fire or the passion of being a fan. I'm happy to say that I left the profession of pro wrestling more of a fan, even though it was stressful at times, even though it was hard at times, even though it was hard work at times. I still fucking love it. And I knew that you guys would be wonderful company, and I wanted to be a fan that night, and that's what I got to do for those 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, we got really lit at Madison Square Garden. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait to go back.
How do you think? Because I mean, I trained in acting, and I definitely started to kind of not enjoy it as much because it became work, and it's been like my main passion since as far back as I can remember. And you hear this a lot from a lot of like musicians and things. You start actually studying music, and suddenly kind of that spark sometimes leaves you. Do you think had you have stayed there, you might have lost that passion, and that was part of the reason you wanted to go? Or how was it that you managed to keep that kind of love for pro wrestling whilst being in the midst of it, and probably one of the most stressful times of your life?
The example, Davie, that you mentioned is interesting because I've lived that before. Right when I graduated high school, I knew music was what I wanted to do, so I spent a week at the Berklee School of Music in Boston, which is one of the most prestigious music universities in the world. And I did a week-long drum camp, got to live in the dorm, and got to experience what it would be like to be a student of drumming there. And the blessing of that week was that I realized if I went to university there, I would probably hate music. And all I wanted to do was play in a band. So I just fucking did that. I just played in a band and found success that way. With wrestling, I was always aware of that. And it was really having that Berklee experience many years prior that kind of gave me that heads up of like, yo, look, I have all kinds of jobs in the world. Ring of Honor was lovely in giving me the flexibility to continue playing in a band, to continue being a psychotherapist in the world, to continue my drumming and guitar lesson practice in the world. They gave me the flexibility to continue all of the different careers and paths, the Chocolate Croissants podcast that I was doing at the time and I'm currently doing again now.
Yeah, go for it.
Just finish. They allowed me to continue doing all of that. So that was one of the things. Ring of Honor and pro wrestling didn't define what I did, didn't define me and how I spent the majority of my life. Now, of course, there were weeks where I was spending 40 plus hours, often, more than that, because I was thinking about it all the time. And in that sense, it's consuming me and my energy. But I had enough outlets outside of my identity as employee of Ring of Honor or outside of the identity of person in pro wrestling to balance all of that. Also, I knew that my goal wasn't to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't know if it would last for a year. I didn't know if it would last for 5 years, but I was pretty confident that it wouldn't last for 20 years. So I think that was helpful too in creating the balance and ensuring that I wasn't burnt out. And then also, just to use MSG as an example, what made it so easy to be a fan was that I developed some personal relationships with some of the performers that night. So it was this meta thing of getting into the narrative of the storyline, but also I was like really excited for some of my friends and some of my colleagues. And also half the talent were from New Japan. And these were people that I didn't work with as intensely. So it was easier to be a fan because I didn't have that connection to it.
All I remember is we got to our seats. We were a little late, and as we got to our seat, the battle royal was going on, and then some entrances came out, and then Liger and Muda have a stare down, and we were only in our seats for 5 minutes, and I was like, oh, that's really cool, and it was a really cool moment. So we do appreciate you inviting us over to Madison Square Garden. We have a backyard. We call it MSG here now as well.
Different reason though. I think, it was something that didn't really cross my mind. The fact that most of those performers, because WWE have kind of had a lock on that venue for so long, most of those performers, it was probably their first time there as well. Unless a couple like your kind of Bubba Rays or whatever who would have done. But I'm trying to think back.
Matt Taven.
There's not much ex-WWE talent there that would have worked there. So you're right. It's almost like I'm thinking of my parents watching me on a big stage for the first time. It's kind of that sort of pride as well. And I think fans would have got that as well. These guys they've watched for years and years in Ted Reeve Arena, this rundown tiny
little high school
hockey
gyms.
arena, and now seeing them in that MSG, there was definitely that kind of level of pride there, which I can totally see if you created that close relationship with them.
Yeah, and I think that the uniqueness of that, especially being the first pro wrestling company to run that building, and I think something 70 years perhaps. Look, that became the narrative. That was.
Is that your pickup line at bars now? Well, not at bars now because there is no bars now. But is that your go-to line? Hey, I helped promote a show.
I sold out MSG.
Yeah, I sold out MSG essentially. New Japan helped, but I sold it.
Braden, you think I need pickup lines?
I do say
so
you.
Look,
yeah.
When I was told about this event, I knew that was the story I needed to tell to elevate this. If we were going to sell 18,000 tickets, which we did within 20 minutes of the public on sale, I needed to tell a story where people like the two of you felt that you were included in the narrative of that history, right? So when I was told, yo, Jordan, we're running the Garden, figure it out, to me, the first response was holy shit, it's happening. And that became the first hashtag.
I would say that's something in wrestling in general as well. I know so many people, and it's going to be funny because obviously we've got this Undertaker documentary going on at the moment. I know so many people that started off by going to one WrestleMania, then they went to their second, and then you're looking at someone like The Undertaker's career and go, I'm going to be gutted if the 1 year I don't go is the year he has his retirement match or whatever, which I know now seems ridiculous because is that dude ever going to retire?
Nah.
But there is that kind of nostalgia is huge in wrestling. History is huge in wrestling. We joke about it all the time because Michael Cole will label everything as historic. But you want to be there for the first time MSG has sold out a non-WWE pay-per-view. History is such a big thing for wrestling and wrestling fans that absolutely. That's why I wanted to go. As much as I wanted to see
we are New Japan
we've
fans.
seen them a bunch, just down the road from here. But to see them in that venue was the selling point. And for the first time they do it.
So that's why, hashtag go into the garden. That was the story. I wanted people to get on Ticketmaster, to get that ticket, and then to go on Twitter and have the excitement to publish, I'm hashtag going to the garden. To me, that was my way of letting everyone in on the specialness of that experience. I knew it can only happen once. What that event was could only happen once. And I knew that was, at least for me, the selling point, especially because 9 months prior, there were certain talent that we couldn't promote, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. So the selling point was the fact that, Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling are running Madison Square Garden, and I don't want to miss that. And look, that ended up becoming the theme song. A rapper made a song called Going to the Garden.
He did it live. Yeah.
It was performed, and which goes to show you just the power of words.
Was that the guy that Bubba Ray beat up?
Yeah, Mega Ran. Yeah. My boy's done some tracks with him before. He's in the world of wrestling. Now you've done all this wrestling stuff, but you've actually like you said, you did the opposite of Mace. You left while you were hot. No, you did what I think Mace did that. You left on top. You walked out of there, and now I jokingly said you're kind of a hippie. Because every time I talk to you, you're always super positive, and you're giving me so many messages. And you mentioned that you do work for other stuff. So kind of my hook here on this show is to get some quarantine tips to kind of survive this thing, because I know you are deep in the psychology, and you know so many things. One of my close friends is also, he's very similar. He reminds me of you. He's quite the same. Maybe even more of a hippie and less of a professional. But he always gives me these tips and things that I choose to usually not listen to, such as hey, you should be trying yoga, you should be trying meditation. So I know that you do all this stuff, including Beat Well. So kind of explaining some of that stuff. What are some things here to kind of keep me from not, being sad and depressed and wanting to maybe, do wrestling moves on my roommate because, he drives you crazy, or family members that you're stuck inside? Because I do know you are I've only met you twice in person, and because of the way we can connect with people via messaging and apps and all these things worldwide, we have become friends, and I just want to know all the stuff that you kind of do, because I think you're a very positive person, and I think a lot of people could learn from you.
Thanks, dude. And look, I think you and I really connected in a sense. Look, I was sitting at my desk at Ring of Honor when I found out what happened with live audio wrestling and being purchased, and then getting rid of the podcasts and the content that you guys were creating, and John and Wei and everyone. I've been listening to John and Wei since 2013, maybe. It's been a long time.
Wow.
And I listened to most of the stuff that they put out. And as you guys know, you develop emotional relationships with people that you listen to regularly. As listeners right now have formed with the two of you. It's a really lovely thing. So when I found out that those shows were essentially canceled, it was like a punch to my fucking gut. And then I had a lot of empathy for you, Braden, and reached out. And I was sitting at my computer there at Ring of Honor, chatting with you and asking how you're doing and what your plan is going to be. And, I was in a position to want to be supportive to you because you and John and Wei and others have provided so much value to my life. So I think that's important to share. And look, you said I'm positive. I appreciate that. What's my other choice? To me, that's a very black and white thing. Either I can be more optimistic while still being realistic and positive about the future of my existence, or I don't have to be. But to me, that sounds like a pretty shitty option. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't get depressed. That doesn't mean that I don't get massive anxiety at times. I've experienced both over the past few months. But it has been important to me to develop skills over my life, to develop relationships over my life, to learn how to best respond to these uncomfortable experiences or emotions or sensations. So the way I look at it, you can break it down to short-term things and long-term things. Okay, when this pandemic first happened, there was a meme going around that I really liked, and to paraphrase, it said something like, as human beings, we are like houseplants, except with more complicated emotions, which means every day, in the short term, we need water, we need sunlight, we need air, and we need good nutrients. We need to feed ourselves like food that is actually nourishing.
Chipotle.
You know what? I never had more fucking Chipotle in my life than when I worked at Ring of Honor, because it was right down the street. So look, these are all basic things. Movement, right? Movement every day. Everything is energy. If I'm going to go more of the hippy dippy route, but that's fucking true. If you look at the most micro levels of how we can experience the world, everything literally is energy. We are energy. Emotion, the word emotion, energy in motion. So if we're not physically moving, if we're not expressing our feelings, to even say to someone out loud, yo, I'm feeling sad right now. Yo, I'm feeling anxious right now. If we hold that in, that energy is going to get stuck, right? So we got to get this shit moving. We got to move the energy. We got to move the emotion. If we're sad, it helps to cry. If we feel really angry, it feels good to beat the shit out of a drum set, or it feels good to get in a hard workout. We got to move, both the emotions and our physical bodies. So movement helps a lot. A social life. One of the reasons why I brought back the podcast, Chocolate Croissants, that I do with my brother Justin, who is the bassist of my band, but he's also a registered dietitian and also a personal trainer. And our co-host is our good friend Matt Halpern, who is the drummer of a band called Periphery, one of the most well-known. Yeah, he's one of the most well-known drummers in the world.
Wow.
He's been nominated for Grammys. He's been on the cover of Modern Drummer and has his own signature gear and all that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, so the three of us are Chocolate Croissants, and at the start of this pandemic, one of the first things we did in response, again, we're not reacting to shit, we're responding to it. And when we respond to stuff, that means that there's consciousness. That means that there's intention. When we react, oftentimes that's unconscious. If you said some fucked up shit to me, I might react by punching you in the face. That may not be the best option in the moment, but the difference is having that little space in between of awareness to make a conscious response. So we brought that back as a weekly podcast, but we also had cultivated a couple years ago a private Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/chocolate croissants. I've said that many times. We now have a bit over 1,800 people in there from all over the world. Literally all over the world, dozens and dozens of countries. It's very active. It's very positive.
I'm seeing that a lot right now with like different Facebook groups and not just wrestling, but me and David joined this like bar thing on Facebook, and I don't use Facebook that often, but it's like a whole community of now people who are stuck at home, mostly Americans I find, but who are just like, well, we're stuck at home and this is what we do. So they people are going on like more live stuff. You see, I complain about people going on Instagram Live way too often, but like you see more people doing that. You see more people doing podcasts and creating and creating content, which is really cool to see. Continue with that, because I know that you do a lot of like the music stuff, but the beat well stuff is something I'm very interested in as well. But first, what is a chocolate croissant? Just a croissant with chocolate on top, or like the croissant is made with chocolate in it?
Usually the chocolate's in the center.
Okay, that sounds good.
Classic French pastry. The point of all that, and me sharing about the podcast and in particular the Facebook group, is that it became a function of socialization for us. It gave us purpose to create conversations and content of value. So the focus is on how can I help others. But in doing so, I'm helping myself because I'm able to be connected with a worldwide community of friends and fans and listeners.
Okay, but wait, I'm going to stop you. What would you tell someone right now who maybe doesn't have that? Maybe doesn't have lots of friends, or maybe doesn't know kind of where to start. What would you say to someone who to kind of start from ground zero, who maybe wants to be more social, wants to join these groups, wants to meet people outside and stuff? Because like you said, I'm someone who I know I host podcasts and stuff, but I'm someone who, like, sometimes I can be super extroverted, but something inside of me, like anxiety or something, can take over where I become like super introverted, and it's hard for me to kind of like talk or want to meet people and do that. So especially in a time of need, what would you tell people that maybe don't know where to start?
So look, if you're listening to this, then you obviously give a fuck about the BDE. You guys have created
the Braden and Davie estate, the Braden and Davie experience. Yes.
Yeah, and you guys have created a lovely offering to the people paying attention of inclusive community.
Friends.
You guys build community around what you do. So if you are listening to this and you maybe don't know where to start, there are opportunities within BDE or within Post Wrestling, whether it's lives or message boards, or to call in to some of the shows that John and Wei are doing. There's opportunity there to join community. For someone like you, Braden, I was all kind of talking about short-term daily wins, but also to get into long-term stuff, the work you can put in that is going to set you up for success long-term. Look, self-awareness. There's all kinds of practices for self-awareness. I think the entire game of being a human being is cultivating self-awareness, but balancing that with self-love, accepting what you become aware of. Because you could be the most self-aware person in the world and fucking hate yourself for what you notice, right? So we got to cultivate self-love and self-acceptance. So whether that's a yoga practice or having meaningful, non-surface level conversations with someone you trust, perhaps like Davie, your roommate.
I trust him very much. I do. No, like legit, I trust him. You know how I knew I trusted him? When we became roommates, we were already really good friends, but then I was in the washroom and there was no toilet paper. We were out and I was stuck on the can, and he went out and got me toilet paper. That's when I knew. I pop
every time you say washroom.
Look, bathroom.
Toilet.
The loo.
Bog.
As a quick aside, the first and only time that I met John Pollock in person was at Supercard of Honor in New Orleans in 2018. And, we had been in touch. And during, I think, the intermission of the show, we were texting back and forth, and he was like, yeah, I'm at this concourse, come meet me. He told me Wei was in the washroom, and like that was the coolest fucking thing to me. I also said to him, I've met a lot of interesting, impressive people that I've watched on TV for decades. That entire weekend, New Orleans was perfect for that weekend because everything was within walking distance.
It's the best city, honestly, for like a weekend like that. It's just so easy to get around, see everyone, see everything. I'm with you.
Yeah, so you're just kind of strolling around. You're like, oh shit, there's Bray Wyatt, and oh, there's the Rock and Roll Express, and oh, there's these guys on the indie scene that like this could be the weekend of their career, of their life, and like and there is the entire 2008 SmackDown roster like at a club. Like it was one of the most thrilling weeks of my life. But I told John, like, yo, man, you're the coolest dude I've met so far. And I think he thought I was just trying to be flattering and maybe perhaps joking a bit. And I was like, no, dude, like I'm serious. Like, you're the coolest guy I've met this weekend. And mostly because he used the term washroom. So anyway, look, Braden and Davie, you guys have the luxury of cohabitating with someone that you have trust and love for right now. I spend the majority of my day alone, physically alone.
Right. Yeah,
where
yeah.
I'm living. It sucks. So I think being able to cultivate those kinds of relationships is one of the most healthy things you can do. But Braden, you can only go as deep with Davie as you're able to go with yourself. And that's why cultivating this type of self-awareness and self-love and self-acceptance is the whole game. Because anything that we experience externally is just a mirror reflection of what's going on inside us. For some people, mindfulness meditation may feel too hippy-dippy or woo-woo or just difficult, and I have empathy for that. That is why I use drum circles, and that's why I use music and rhythm in general to offer the experience of connecting with other human beings in deeper ways.
Okay, well, wait. How does that work? Because I know you pretty much, I've never meditated. I don't know where I would even start. I've done some yoga because, like, ex-girlfriends in the past were like, do yoga with me. But, like, I still don't quite get it. But I'll be like, oh, it's a yoga head or someone who's into, like, meditation. I don't even know where I would start because what do I put my fingers and go hum? Like,
No, fuck that.
See, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
No. Even though you are kind of looking Buddha-like.
Yeah, I am. I'm looking like X-Pac today. Or a young buck, really.
Look. For me, a meditation or a mindfulness practice, it can be as simple as one breath, but one intentional breath. Literally just one inhale and one exhale. To me, that was a form of mindfulness meditation. To meditate often is to focus the attention of our mind, to focus our attention on the present moment. The breath is something that is always happening within all of us at any given moment, and that's why it's often used as an anchor for a mindfulness meditation practice. Look, thoughts are always going through our minds. Right? Some people have trouble falling asleep at night because it's like they can't turn their fucking mind off.
Oh, man.
I know what that's like, and it sucks.
Worst.
Look, most of our thoughts aren't even real. They're not even based in reality. Most of our thoughts are based in fear. Most of our thoughts are based in conditioning from the culture or from a teacher or from your mom. And to meditate, to become more self-aware, this is really cultivating the relationship with ourself. It's turning our attention inward, or just turning our attention to what's happening in the moment. I can just stare at a tree and just notice, like, all right, these are the colors, that's the texture, that's the shape. When I'm doing a practice like that, my attention is on something tangible that's happening in the present moment. I'm not thinking about something that happened 10 years ago when I asked some girl out and she rejected me and I'm still feeling the shame of that. I'm not thinking about the deadline I have for Ring of Honor next week that's causing all this anxiety because I'm thinking about all the work I have ahead of me. No, I'm focusing on what's happening in the present moment. So really a meditation practice is just cultivating the connection to the present. And it's creating a distance between what many people call our monkey mind, of these thoughts just bouncing from one to the next, or we might have an emotion like anxiety or fear or sadness, and then we just get so attached to that uncomfortable sensation or emotion. It's stepping back and just simply observing these things. It's creating space instead of identifying with every thought, instead of identifying with the roles that we play in the world or the feelings that we experience. It's just like, yo, let me take a step back and just simply observe this shit without attaching to it, without getting wrapped up in all that. It's just noticing it. And like a cloud that rolls on by, you notice a cloud in the sky, it's there, and then it's gone. Well, I could have a really anxious thought that comes to mind, but I could just simply look at it. I'm not trying to hide it. I'm not trying to bury it. I'm not trying to avoid it. I can just simply look at the thought that may make me feel a bit anxious, and I notice it. I say, there it is, and then it passes just like a cloud. When we do that, we're just simply observing, and we're creating distance. I go back to what I was talking about before. It's the difference between reacting unconsciously to something versus responding with consciousness to something. Often we just react to every thought and to every feeling, and that can lead us into these cycles of just unproductivity or things that just don't help.
I've always found with me, because I'm definitely one who struggles with thoughts at night, and it's obviously because you've got that time and there's nothing else to do. You're lying in a dark room and your thoughts start saying, "Hey."
I try everything.
I don't do it as often as I should, but when I have had problems, I get up and write it down. It's like you saying about actually observing it. So, just as an example, say, okay, it's Friday today. I've got I know I'm going to get test results for something tomorrow. There's nothing I can do that's going to change the results of that test in that moment in time. It's 1 a.m. I'm lying in bed in a dark room.
True.
There's nothing I can do. I'm also thinking, I need to make sure I get broccoli tomorrow. Whatever. And you start thinking about it, and you start overthinking about it, and then eventually when you do get to sleep, you're dreaming about getting test results about broccoli and shit like this. So even though you're asleep, you're not, because your mind is still working on that. And I've often found, when I've got up and written down, okay, a shopping list, things I need to get done tomorrow, test result, okay, or job interview. I don't get the job, right, well, I should find out at this time. I'm going to, update my resume after. And, you have a plan or something like that, and then you look at it, read it, and then, try and just put it away. And it's sometimes not as easy as that, but a lot of the time, when I physically look at this piece of paper, I'm like, why have I been thinking about this for 2 hours and not sleeping? Because it's literally buying broccoli and a result that I have no, effect on at this point. The exam's done or whatever. So, and you often feel a bit, I don't know if silly is the right word, but it kind of calms me, I find. And it's definitely something I've done in the past, especially when there've been lots of random things, add relationship issues and got to meet someone at a certain time the next day, and all those pile up. It can just feel like a mess in your head.
Yeah, one of the recent guests we had on the Chocolate Croissants podcast is this drummer, Benny Greb. He's from Germany. I spent 2 long weekends with him in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York, helping to manage his master's session. People from all over the world literally came to learn from this man. He is the most impressive, not only artist, but just human beings that I've ever got to work with and spend intimate time with over a period of time. And on the episode about a month ago, he said the phrase that really stuck with me and a lot of our listeners. When we write things down, we are making the immaterial material, our thoughts. So when we can get our thoughts down onto paper, we can actually get a handle of them. Not only is it helpful just to dump it out, if you got to pick up broccoli tomorrow, to just write it down, that is getting that shit out of you, because you're not going to have to worry about remembering it.
Yeah.
Right?
So I should just write down, get a tank.
Is that some weed reference, Braden?
No, Shotzi Blackheart, NXT.
That's why you're not sleeping.
But even things more important than our to-do list, our feelings, especially uncomfortable feelings, but even positive things, our dreams. Look, I think it was back in 2014, I wrote on Facebook something about the power of affirmations, and then I wrote, I will share a Beatwell play shop with the Ring of Honor roster. I did not know how that was going to happen. And look, it didn't happen. But the fact that I wrote that down publicly set the wheels in motion for me to execute on certain behaviors and to cultivate certain mindsets that led me to eventually doing far more, which was getting a full-time job with Ring of Honor.
So I should be writing more things down. I should be actually... I like I said, I'm not too into the meditation thing, but you kind of have set me in the right direction, at least, where you can just kind of check out almost, and just kind of, like you said, see things go by and don't focus too much. Another thing that I knew I had to bring up with you, because I mentioned another one of my friends always says this. He always says that if you got a problem, there's one way. Now, more specifically, if you live somewhere, obviously, where it is nicer weather, but this is a strange thing, and I had mentioned it to you, and you were like, oh, 100%. You said that you do it all the time. And that is, you got a problem, take your socks and shoes off, go find a nice green patch of grass, and just, like, stand in it. Now, what the hell is the deal with this? Because I mentioned it to you, and you got your socks off.
Grounding, man. Yeah. I mean, look, we're wild animals. You know, most of how we live our lives isn't that natural. One of the reasons I left Ring of Honor, to be honest, is because spending the majority of many of my days indoors in a carpeted office, sitting at a computer, like, that's not natural. It's not natural to anyone. Most of us have adopted these rituals because there are a lot of ways to earn money living that lifestyle. But it's not natural. And to me, it didn't feel good. I became significantly less healthy living that lifestyle. So to stand on grass with bare feet, or to stand...
It sounds ridiculous, but, like, I've actually done it. Dude, it's great.
the most powerful wisdom, the most healing practices, it's the most simple. It's drinking clean water. It's eating real food. It's taking deep breaths. It's being in nature. It's connecting with another human being in a non-surface level way. Back before, I said words matter, and you were talking about meditation perhaps being this opportunity. I forget your language, but to, like, check out, I'd argue it's the exact opposite. I'd argue when we're stuck in our minds with anxious thoughts about something that might happen next week, that's checking out. That's not being consistent or in rhythm with reality. To meditate is in fact checking in a more realistic way with ourselves. And dude, like, I'm not gonna get, like, off you for this. Look, with any practice, it's a practice, right? I, as a drummer, when I was 10, if I couldn't do what Matt Halpern could do when he was 10, which will always be the case. He's one of the world's greatest drummers right now. I didn't beat myself up for that, right? If I'm trying to sit down and meditate and it's hard, well, no shit, it's hard, because it's a practice. So that's why this idea of self-love and self-acceptance and self-compassion is something that I'm really riffing on, and it's giving me energy, because I see so much of the world not giving it to itself, and look at the results, right? So I think to be easy on ourselves, to be kind to ourselves, especially when we know we're trying to just help ourselves, even if it's difficult, whether that's trying to take a few deep mindful breaths or trying to go train for a fucking marathon or whatever it may be.
I just find that I'm lucky enough. I do live with a roommate. You said, like, maybe you're by yourself most of the time because like most of the world, we're all stuck inside. And what do? You watch TVs, you pick movies, you go outside, you exercise. Like, there's only so many limited things you can do compared to people like me and Davie, who our lifestyle is usually we go out a lot. Like, we go out, we try to be social, and now that's kind of taken away from us because you can't really go hang out in places because they're telling you not to do this all over the world. So it's just kind of like everything right now is almost like it's a downer. Like, your routine is just going, if you are still working, then you're working, and you're going home, and you're getting groceries, and you're doing Zoom calls. Like, there's only so much that can fill.
I'm wondering, though, because I feel, obviously, that the whole pandemic thing is awful, but I definitely believe that there are positives to come out of it. I almost see it like a Noah's Ark. Like, right, just flood the earth and start again with these two people. I know that sounds extreme, but you look at Venice and there are dolphins in the water and the water's clean. Like, I've been to Venice. That place stinks because the water is so polluted, and now the water's blue and there are dolphins in, and that was just a matter of, like, weeks of no, like, humans kind of just destroying the place. I've lived in Canada 4 years now, over 4 years, and I've spoken to my friends back home more in the last 2 months than I have since I moved here through Zoom calls. And although it's using social media, it's using it for the right way. It's not going to a restaurant with friends and all being on our phones to check what someone might have tweeted you or the girl on Tinder might have messaged you. It's sitting down in a room, not physically, but with those people and actually engaging with them on a human level at some point. And I really hope, and obviously there's been awful news recently with social media where people have used it the wrong way. But as you said, like the virtual dive bar that we've checked in is pretty active all the time. We're in Facebook groups for our local community, and it's all people helping out. We've just launched the upNXT one because we kind of want to get the community kind of feeling closer together there. And sure, there's definitely negative aspects of social media, but I think this is really the time to embrace it and try and hopefully reconnect with other human beings, even though you're not in the same room. And hopefully, once all this mess is over, we will kind of leave our phones switched off in our pocket and engage properly with other humans. Like going out might be different. Like a more like we see it as social as going out, but who knows? Maybe we'll make more friends and actually because you need that physical contact.
Mm-hmm. I just want a hug.
But that's interesting. Yeah. So when I was training at drama school, we had this movement teacher who was amazing and is one of the top kind of animal studies movement teachers in the world for acting. And we did a whole thing on gender studies. And so like obviously there are like stereotypes and things, but she said in general, when fighting, women will scatter. So women will do more like slapping or pulling. Men will gather. Like men will wrestle in general. And she says, I believe that's because men, it's getting less so now, but it's still a thing, don't get that human contact. Girls will have sleepovers where they'll share a bed with their girlfriends or wherever, whereas guys will find that weird. So how do guys get that physical contact? And it's more by wrestling.
By fighting.
I'd wrestle with my brother, whereas a girl might do each other's hair and makeup and stuff. And it's still physical contact, which as animals we need. And I kind of thought back and was like, no, that's completely true. A man wrestles, they'll grab him in a headlock or whatever and try and pull in because you need that contact. And that is something we've been kind of deprived of.
So should I do a one-winged angel on you later?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, in my professional expertise, I would say that would be very healthy tonight, as long as it's live streamed.
So Jordan, like in a nutshell, for someone listening who's like, okay, well, you're trying to give me all these tips in a little bubble here. What's kind of the tips to quote unquote like survive this thing, survive your pandemic? What are some tips that you could give someone who may not know anything? Someone who's listening right now is like, yo, I thought this was a wrestling podcast, and they're getting all serious and like deep, and we're just kind of like you said, we were shooting the shit and doing something different. But what is kind of like a little note to someone who's like, you mentioned the meditation, you mentioned like good thoughts and attitudes and stuff, but anything else you want to kind of throw out there?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that by touching on a few of the things you guys said. Look, I have empathy for you, Braden. I get energy by being around people. I live alone in Baltimore City, which means that I go out most nights, usually to experience live music, to play live music myself, or to just walk around the city and be around people. Like, I love Baltimore, and I love people. I can't do that right now, and it fucking sucks. So the first thing, I think, is to just be kind to ourselves and accept the fact that this sucks. It's okay to acknowledge that, like, this is really hard, and there's many things about what we're doing for some of us that is brutal. It is, I haven't played a show since last September, and we were the band I'm in, we were being strategic about not playing for a little while because we want every show to count. And we had a really significant show booked at the end of April, which would have been a month ago, that would have sold out and would have been incredible. And I didn't get to do that. Like, dreams of mine were ripped away from me because of this pandemic. That sucks. But to Davie's point, there's plenty of opportunity in this as well. We would not be having this conversation if it weren't for a global pandemic right now. I believe that. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation because it's fun for me to do this, and I want to fuck with you guys. I believe that this pandemic can be one of the biggest opportunities of our lifetime. If we choose to look at it that way, I go back to earlier in the conversation. Why am I positive? Well, what's my other choice? To be negative? So for me, and to think again about like long-term goals, a lot of us have more free time right now. So it's considering how do we best use that time? We use our time most productively when we have a goal in mind. A lot of us don't have goals, especially big goals in mind, for all kinds of reasons. Again, another reason to develop self-awareness, to really sit down and ask yourself, what the fuck do I like? Like when my responsibilities are done for the day, what am I thinking about? What do I Google? What do I talk to my friends about? What do I fuck with? For most people listening to this, the answer is probably pro wrestling. You know, and for me, the answer was pro wrestling. And eventually I was able to work with all of my fear. I was able to work with all of my resistance. I was able to work with all of the beliefs that I carried that told me it's too improbable, or it's too ridiculous, or it's too impossible to try to get a high-level job in pro wrestling. I was able to, again, not deny all that, but to notice it, say, I see you, but I'm not going to believe you, and I'm going to find a way to make that happen. I'm doing that now in different ways. One of the things that is giving me energy is this concept of rhythm-based marketing. It's using all these skills and experiences from Ring of Honor to my bands to building a legitimate company in the world where I'm hustling drum circles and rhythmic exercises for healing and for community building. That didn't pay my rent because I didn't have mindset and behaviors that allowed me to create that in the world. So now I've been operationalizing what has helped me live these dreams, and I'm feeling energy as a long-term project about figuring out how do I express that, how do I package that, how do I deliver that to the world. Look, one of the most productive things I've also done in this quarantine is read a biography about Walt Disney. You know?
Okay.
And I don't want people to think that to make the best use of their time, they need to like start a business or do something that seems like lofty.
Mm-hmm.
By reading a book that was sitting collecting dust for 15 years, it became one of the things I looked forward to every morning. Which is a luxury right now. I looked forward to waking up in the morning, making coffee, putting on some good music, and reading this Walt Disney biography. And through doing that, I left so inspired and so informed about the mindset and behaviors of one of the most accomplished creatives in the history of the world, and also got some world history as I'm learning about the pandemic from 100 years ago and both world wars as his narrative, crosses with those life events.
Disney World might be reopening in July. Does the book say anything about him being frozen? Not there yet. You're not there yet.
No, I finished it.
Okay.
I finished it. No, but spoiler alert, it says he was cremated.
Oh, controversial.
Yes, super controversial. But the reason I bring that up is because I want people to know that, at least in my definition of making the best use of our time, of being productive, especially when we can't physically be with other people, reading a book, I look at that as one of the most enjoyable, productive things I've done so far. Simply reading a fucking book. But I've chosen to look at it that way. Again, our minds are so powerful, and it's the difference. Again, a reason why I just try to sell self-awareness and sell mindfulness so hard is because the mind is going to be there whether we like it or not. Are we going to let it drive us, or are we going to take the wheel and be in control? right? So the more that we can develop the relationship with ourselves, with our mind, with our behaviors, with our emotions, et cetera, then we're taking the wheel of our life. And then we can have vision for the future and be like, that feels good to me. That seems interesting to me. I want to try to accomplish that, right? But when most people, when they said like, yo, you are this musician and then you're a licensed psychotherapist, but you combined all that and now like you're working for this pro wrestling company. people think it's like this circuitous route where none of it makes sense. And it's like, no, motherfucker, it's all storytelling. It's all connecting with people in deeper ways. I see the through line of all these things. Again, I started introducing myself by saying what my mission is, what I believe. I believe life improves when we feel connected. And that can be through pro wrestling, that can be through a band, or that could be through the rhythmic experience of, quote, non-musicians, et cetera, et cetera. These are the things that make me feel alive. These are the things that make life worth living for me. But that's an active choice every day. Some days I'm more depressed. Some days I'm more anxious. Some days I say, fuck it. I don't want to get dressed. I just want to lay in bed. But after a little while of that, ultimately I have to say to myself, look, it's time to like start living again. But I know for me right now what living looks like.
Sunny days, everybody has them. But tell me, baby, can you stand the rain? That's it. Jordan, that is you're really inspirational. Thank you for telling us all this stuff and kind of filling us in. Because we thought this would kind of be a little different and a little more interesting than just talking about like a movie we watched or something like that. Because these are thoughts that kind of people have on their brain and things that you kind of just said going off on. Like you're very knowledgeable and you're very like passionate about it. And I'll say like you are very inspiring, and I know we've connected through like wrestling and stuff, but we talk here and there on social media and chatting things, and it's just cool. More people should kind of have that mindset, and I'm definitely gonna do meditation, and I'll let you know how it goes. It's gonna be my next thing. But thank you so much for like filling us in on some of this stuff that we would never talk about.
Absolutely. Like that was such an interesting chat, and like I feel more positive already.
You're making me so positive, Jordan.
Before we go, can you just like once again kind of tell us where we can find you? Beat Well, Chocolate Croissants, Twitter, like whatever you have. Can you just let our listeners know where they can find the wonderful Jordan Goodman?
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity to do that. Instagram is fun at Jordan Beatwell. Look, there's a couple of things while I have the privilege of your platform that I want to share.
Absolutely.
Look, to do these things that we think are hippy-dippy or woo-woo, like mindfulness meditation, for instance. These are the things, people use the term soft skills, especially in this new economy that will be evolving as we come out of this pandemic. These type of soft skills, empathy, learning to deal with people, learning to read a room. Some uber masculine people may think of that shit as soft. That's why I hate the term soft skills. But I'm telling you, brother, this is what's going to make you the baddest motherfucker alive. All right, I'm telling you, to really know ourselves and to know how to interact with people. I mean, that's how you get shit done. That's how you accomplish dreams and goals. So I want to say that. If you're more interested in some of these things that I'm riffing on, like rhythm-based marketing, or really the story of how I got Ring of Honor to create a full-time leadership position for me, I went on, I pretty much gave a 54-minute presentation in the Chocolate Croissants private Facebook group, all while eating baby food.
Yeah, I don't know why you eat baby food. It's the hook to get people to watch you eat baby food. We'll have to do it one time with you.
So I would love. We should.
We refuse to do it today. We say absolutely not.
Look, another spoiler alert. It's disgusting. But look, I will say that I feel really good about doing that. Again, if you want to watch that in its entirety, facebook.com/groups/chocolate croissants, or just search chocolate croissants on Facebook. But those 54 minutes was one of the purest, most honest expressions of who I am. One of the things that I don't love as much about doing just a straight up chocolate croissants episode is because I don't get the opportunities, because it's not really the right opportunity to be just like absurd. That is more of an expression of more serious, mindful, mature parts of my personality. When I play in my band Reindeer, we have like fucking real life furries, like with like bubble machines and glow sticks. Like that to me is absurdism. To eat baby food while providing what I will eventually sell as a keynote presentation for thousands of dollars.
TED Talk.
Yeah, dude, to do that while I'm eating and reviewing baby food, like that's fucking absurd. And I love absurd humor. And so to be able to marry all these different aspects of my personality and my energy, it's what a gift to me. And by doing that, I've found that it's one of the things I've done recently that has resonated most with people. Because, again, we are mirrors. So when I show up fully as myself, then for the people that are going to fuck with that, they go deep with it, right? Because I'm not trying to please everyone. The very last thing I will share is that with John and Wei, I was booked as a guest on their Christmas show in December 2018.
You told me that was your goal in life, that like once you got on the Christmas show, you're done. You're good.
The only reason I spent a year and a half trying to get a position at Ring of Honor Wrestling was just so I would have enough social capital to be invited as a guest on the post-wrestling Christmas show. So I was booked maybe the night before.
I will say I was Jim Ross in like WWF mid 90s 2000s. I had a little talk with Post Wrestling. I said, look, there's this guy. He has an open slot on the Christmas show. It needs to happen. And John was like, yeah, it could happen. And then you couldn't do it.
Well, look, I appreciate you putting me over, brother. The reason why I texted John and said, hey, man, I feel awful, but I can't do it, is because I knew I couldn't be as honest as I would like. I mean, this was...
you were still working for them.
Yeah, I was working at Ring of Honor, and at that time, things were a bit stressful for me. Look, I'm never going to be interested in like talking about private personal matters within that company. That's just not my style. That's not my motivation. But I knew that I couldn't be as honest and as alive as they deserved to have me. And because of that, I told him like, thanks, but now's not the time.
We're going to have you on. We're going to get you on it though. We'll get you on a Christmas show. I'm going to state publicly again, putting out affirmations into the world, having clear vision for what you most desire in the world. My goal for 2020, amidst a global pandemic and a worldwide recession, is for me to be on the Post Wrestling Christmas show. There you go. I like it.
John, Wei, you listening?
Yeah. That's right. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us here. One more time, can people find your like Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff?
Yeah, look, chocolatecroissants.com, chocolate croissants in your podcast app, youtube.com/chocolate croissants. If you're interested in the drumming stuff I do, beatwell.org. I love, look, I'm a wrestling fan at heart, and I love connecting with other wrestling fans. So Instagram is good, at Jordan Beatwell.
Hey, thank you so much.
Wonderful.
That was a lot of fun. I hope you listening right now, you got something out of this, because like usually we just chat movies and wrestling, but I thought it would be something a little bit more different, and I think people will really like it. And I thought that was a lot of fun, very eye opening, and you are very inspiring, brother. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to this. Follow us on our Facebook group that we created. John Sino, our like associate producer, helped set up he's helped running our Twitter and our Facebook account there at upNXT Podcast. We are the NXT Podcast. Every Wednesday night we go live on YouTube chatting about NXT. YouTube.com/upNXT is where you can find us. What else is there for me to say here?
Patreon.com/upNXT.
Yes.
We'll have our Godfather review coming out on Sunday. Our review of TNA Lockdown 2009 will be up as you're listening to this.
See, we're in lockdown
right now.
So we reviewed Lockdown.
And keep an eye on the Facebook group, keep an eye on the Twitter, because we'll be having June's schedule released very soon. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we did a best match ever, getting super nerdy into wrestling with John Pollock for Stan Hansen. All these like old school Japanese wrestling matches, which was just awesome. $5 a month on our Patreon gets you all the podcasts we're talking about. We have so many movie reviews, so much wrestling reviews. It's just, that's what we've been doing in quarantine. So now you know. So thank you for listening to this. We will be back to regular scheduled NXT programming Wednesday, Thursday, whenever you get your podcast. So thank you for listening to this. Thank you, Jordan, for coming on. We will get you on that Christmas show, brother.
Yes.
We will get you.
Thank you guys so much. I love you both, and I just want to say that Evil Doink the Clown is underrated.
Yeah, you have a really weird obsession that you think he wants to do a best match ever Doink, and I said absolutely not.
Just Evil Doink, though?
Just Evil Doink.
Just Evil Doink.
Yeah. I'm with you there.
Was there more than one match? Best match ever.
Evil Doink?
I don't know. I can't even remember it.
He doesn't know.
Best Doink ever we can do.
Thank you for listening. I myself, Braden Herrington. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram. I'm at the Brady.
And I'm at Davie Portman.
Thank you for listening. Hey, take care of yourselves. Call someone, text someone you love, text someone you care about, make friends, say hi to people. Just be positive. Don't be negative. Be positive. And take your shoes off, take your socks off, put it on some grass if you can, and just be cool. Life's short. Life's a garden. Dig it.